A poor single mom, clutching her hungry son, sacrificed her last son meal to a crippled beggar on a cold street, but she had no idea the trembling man she fed was a billionaire CEO, and the quiet way he watched her walk away hinted that what he did to repay her kindness would shock everyone. Who was this crippled beggar really? Why would a billionaire CEO be hiding in pain? And how far would a poor single mom's sacrifice reach when the truth finally surfaced? Asterisk, she stood there longer than she meant to, the paper bag of food already empty in her hands, its greasy warmth fading into the morning air. Lena Harper, a poor single mom, had learned to count everything: coins, steps, breaths, because life had taught her that anything uncounted disappeared. The last son meal she'd saved from a night shift at the diner had been measured carefully for her boy, Evan, who waited at home with homework spread across a wobbly table. She could still picture his eyes when he'd asked if there was enough this time. There never was. Not really. Asterisk, the crippled beggar sat slumped near the subway stairs, his legs twisted beneath a frayed blanket, a battered cane resting uselessly beside him. People passed without seeing him, or they saw too much and chose to look away. Lena had almost done the same, but then their eyes met. His were clear, sharp, and settlingly calm for a man shivering on concrete. A man who thanked her not with desperation, but with a dignity that made her chest ache. Asterisk, she remembered hesitating, remembered thinking of Evan's hollow cough, the way he pretended not to be hungry, remembered the rent notice folded in her pocket, the red ink like a bruise, and still, she tore the bag open and placed the food into the beggar's hands. "It's my son's," she'd said, as if confession might excuse the choice. The man had paused, fingers tightening, and for a second she thought he would refuse. Instead, he bowed his head. "Then it will matter," he said softly. Asterisk, now. Walking away, Lena told herself not to look back. Charity was a luxury. She couldn't afford regret. Yet the words followed her, tugging at something buried deep. "Then it will matter," as if the city itself had leaned in to listen. Asterisk, 3 blocks later, she felt it, the prickle at the base of her neck, the sense of being watched, not with hunger, with recognition. Asterisk, the crippled beggar was not what he seemed. Asterisk, miles beneath the street, in a polished garage that smelled of oil and rain, a black sedan idled. Its driver checked his watch again, worry creasing his face. "Sir," he murmured into a hidden mic. "We've lost visual." On the rear seat lay a tailored coat folded with military precision, a pair of cufflinks engraved with a discreet insignia. Nathaniel Cross, a billionaire CEO known for acquisitions that toppled empires, had vanished by choice. Asterisk, Nathaniel had learned early how to disappear. As a boy, he'd hidden under tables while his father ranted about numbers that never added up. As a man, he'd learned that power made people lie to your face. The accident, metal screaming, glass blooming into stars, had taken the use of his legs and given him something else: clarity. When the doctors spoke gently about permanence, when the board spoke sharply about succession, Nathaniel made a decision that startled everyone who knew him. He would see the world again, not as a name, but as a man unseen. Asterisk, so he traded suits for rags, security for shadows. He learned how quickly kindness thinned when money disappeared. He learned the taste of cold. He learned the weight of a gaze that judged without knowing. And then unexpectedly he learned the weight of a poor single mom's choice. Asterisk, when Lena had placed the last son meal into his hands, something inside Nathaniel shifted. He recognized the math in her eyes, the subtraction she was making and the cost she was accepting. He had seen deals sealed with less courage. Asterisk, back in her apartment, Lena set down her keys and braced herself before calling out. Evan, her son, emerged, all elbows and hope. "Did you eat?" he asked. Too quickly. She lied because mothers do. He smiled because sons believe. The lie sat between them like a third presence, heavy and humming. Asterisk, that night, as Evan slept, Lena stared at the ceiling and replayed the moment. The man's voice, the steadiness, the way he'd watch her go, as if memorizing her steps. She told herself it meant nothing. She told herself a crippled beggar was just a man in need. She told herself tomorrow would be better. Asterisk, across the city, Nathaniel returned to a temporary suite he'd kept under another name. His aides hovered, furious and relieved. Reports spilled onto screens: stock prices, legal threats, the board's impatience. He waved them away. His mind was on a paper bag, on a woman's cracked hands, on a boy he had not met. "Find her," he said, voice low, quietly. When they protested, he cut them off. "No gifts, no cameras, not yet." Asterisk, he rolled to the window and looked down at the city that had given him everything and taken so much. He thought of repayment not as charity, but as justice. He thought of timing. He thought of the shock that would ripple when truth met sacrifice. Asterisk, because what he did to repay her kindness would not be loud at first. It would be precise. It would reach places money rarely touched, and when it finally surfaced, It would shock everyone, starting with the poor single mom who believed her choice had gone unnoticed, and ending with a billionaire CEO who would learn whether redemption could stand where power had failed.
Clara sank into the worn booth at the diner, the hum of heaters and clatter of dishes offering a fragile comfort against the winter wind outside. Noah climbed onto the seat across from her, cheeks flushed from the cold, eyes still wide from the bus stop encounter. Mom, do you think he'll be okay? Noah asked, fingers fidgeting with the hem of his coat. Clara forced a smile, though her mind was elsewhere. I think he will be. Sometimes, people just need to feel remembered, honey. That's all. Her words sounded hollow even to her. Clara had spent the last 4 years navigating a world that seemed intent on reminding her of loss. Since Evan's death in a construction accident, life had become a series of compromises and sacrifices. She remembered the day vividly, the hospital corridor, the sterile smell of antiseptic, the doctor's quiet words echoing through her skull. I'm so sorry. There was nothing we could do. The accident had been brief, almost mechanical, a scaffolding collapse, the result of a poorly maintained site. Evan's employer had settled quickly, paying hush money and moving on, leaving her with the hole he left behind. Clara had no time to grieve properly. Bills still needed to be paid. Noah still needed to eat. And yet, the wound never fully healed. As she stared into the small cup of coffee in front of her, memories blurred into the present. The smell of Evan's old leather jacket, the soft laughter they had shared during late-night drives, the promise he had made every Christmas to make life magical, even when money was tight. And now, each day, she felt the weight of providing for Noah alone, the fear of failing him gnawing at her like a persistent shadow. Noah's voice pulled her back. Mom, remember when Daddy gave his coat to that man in the rain? Clara's throat tightened. She had almost forgotten. It had been the first lesson he had ever tried to teach her son. Kindness is never wasted. She nodded. Yes, he did. And it was the right thing to do, wasn't it? Yeah, Noah whispered. Maybe that's why I like giving cookies to people at school sometimes. Clara's chest swelled with pride, but also a twinge of sadness. Here was her son, absorbing lessons from a father he barely remembered, carrying on traditions that she sometimes felt too tired to uphold. She reached over and squeezed his hand. You have his heart in you, Noah. Always remember that. Meanwhile, miles away in the same city, Daniel Whitmore sat alone in his high-rise office, a panoramic view of twinkling lights below. The office was immaculate, cold, and orderly like the life he had built, controlled, measured, and devoid of genuine warmth. He traced the edge of the scarf Clara had given him, letting his fingers linger on the uneven stitches. The smell of wool, faint but comforting. He had seen wealth in every form, commanded it, manipulated it, and yet here he was, staring at a handmade scarf that reminded him of everything he had lost. The Christmases he had abandoned after his wife and daughter died in a car accident years ago, leaving him with wealth, but no human connection. He closed his eyes and remembered the last Christmas with them, the laughter, the paper chains on the tree, the smell of fresh pine and cinnamon. And then, the crash. The abrupt silence. For a moment, he wondered how many times kindness like Clara's had passed him by, and noticed, while he chased deals and numbers, he felt something stir a long-forgotten human truth, that sometimes, one small gesture could pierce even the most fortified armor of loneliness. Back in the diner, Clara finished her coffee, counting coins again as she prepared for the night shift at the hospital. Every patient, every hallway, reminded her of Evan, especially the ones whose stories mirrored her own. A man in room 402 with a fractured arm, a young woman clutching a newborn. The nurses who moved too quickly to notice the small suffering between the lines, she saw herself in them. And yet, despite exhaustion, despite the constant struggle, she held on to hope. Hope that some good still existed in the world. Hope that kindness mattered. Hope that, somehow, her simple act at the bus stop had touched someone, even if she didn't know it yet. As she and Noah walked back to the small apartment they shared. The snow fell heavier, soft and persistent, covering the city in white. Clara pulled her coat tighter, feeling the weight of responsibility, but also the spark of something she couldn't yet name. Somewhere out there, the man who had received her gift carried it with him, not as a transaction, not as an obligation, but as a reminder that human connection still mattered. Scanned as Daniel stared at the scarf in his office. A quiet question formed in his mind. Who was she? He didn't know yet that finding out would unravel everything he thought he understood about responsibility, wealth, and the lives his decisions had touched. And Clara, blissfully unaware, went home to her son, never imagining that this Christmas Eve marked by hardship, snow, and a simple gesture was the beginning of a chain of events that would forever alter the course of both their lives. Daniel Whitmore stared at the scarf again, then even stitches a stark contrast to the precise world he had built around himself. His assistant had called hours ago, leaving a message filled with the usual reports, stock fluctuations, project deadlines, quarterly profits. He hadn't answered. Tonight, nothing mattered but the memory of the woman and her son at the bus stop. He didn't know her name. He didn't know anything about her life. And yet, the urge to find her gnawed at him relentlessly. A single, handmade gift had pierced his carefully constructed armor, and in that moment, he felt something he hadn't felt in years: responsibility. He tapped a button on his sleek glass desk, activating his personal research network. Within minutes, he had pieced together the fragments of her life from public records, hospital reports, and social media breadcrumbs. Clara Jensen, single mother, works 2 jobs, widowed, lives in a modest apartment in the northeast quadrant of the city. He froze. Widowed. The word hit him with the force of a memory he had buried deep. A construction accident 4 years ago that had claimed a man named Evan Jensen. Daniel had signed the settlement. He hadn't remembered the name until now, until the scarf reminded him of the soft patterns his own daughter had loved to weave into gifts. He sank back into his chair, heart tightening. The company he had built his life's work had indirectly destroyed a family. And here he was, holding a reminder of the very human cost he had always chosen to ignore. Meanwhile, Clara and Noah were at home, the apartment warm but dimly lit, the faint smell of roasted chestnuts from the neighbor drifting through the cracked window. Noah sat on the floor, arranging small toy figurines in a circle, murmuring stories as he always did. Clara sank into the threadbare sofa, rubbing her temples, replaying the bus stop scene over and over. Mom, do you think people are good, even when life is hard? Noah asked. His voice was quiet, vulnerable. Clara exhaled slowly. I want to believe that, Noah. I really do. She looked out the window, watching the snow pile against the streetlights. Sometimes, the smallest act of kindness can change someone's day, or maybe even their whole life. Noah's gaze flickered toward the door, as if sensing something in the silence beyond. He didn't know it yet, but that gift, that tiny gesture of warmth, had already set in motion events that would forever alter their lives. Daniel sat at his desk long into the night, the city stretching beneath him like a grid of possibilities. Memories swirled: board meetings, legal documents, signatures he had made without thought, faces he had never connected to the consequences. Evan Jensen's name surfaced, almost like a whisper, tied to a scaffolding collapse on one of his company's earlier projects. Daniel had buried the incident beneath settlements and insurance claims, never considering the human stories left in its wake. He leaned back, staring at the scarf again. The wool was imperfect, handmade, alive. Unlike his boardrooms, unlike his controlled, sterile life, this was real, honest. A memory struck him suddenly. A photograph of his late daughter smiling, holding a small handmade gift similar to this scarf. He remembered the words she had once whispered: Daddy, the people you help are the people you become. Daniel hadn't understood them at the time. Now, he did. The next morning, Clara headed to the hospital for her shift, Noah bundled and waving goodbye at the door. Her coat was patched in several places, a testament to years of careful thrift. The streets were slick with ice, the snow still falling steadily, muffling the city's usual clamor. As she pushed open the hospital doors, she didn't know that Daniel had already dispatched an anonymous message to the hospital's volunteer coordination office, quietly checking schedules, trying to see where she might be. Not to interfere, not to intrude yet, just to learn, to understand. He wanted to see her, not as an employee, not as a statistic in a corporate ledger, but as the woman who had reminded him what humanity could be. He had no plan, no press releases, no cameras, just responsibility. Asterisk inside, Clara moved through the sterile hallways with practiced efficiency, greeting patients and nurses with a soft smile that belied her exhaustion. She handed blankets to a shivering patient, adjusted an elderly woman's pillow, and offered gentle words to a frightened child. Each gesture was a tiny act of defiance against the harshness of her own life. Asterisk meanwhile, Daniel traced each step of her day from his office, remembering every small moment. He saw her compassion mirrored the love she had once received from her husband, a love that had been extinguished far too early, yet still radiated through her. Asterisk, and in that quiet, invisible observation, Daniel made the first real choice that would alter the course of both their lives. He would not let her generosity go unanswered. He would not simply observe. He would act. Asterisk, but how? And when? Those questions hung in the air, as thick and unyielding as the snow outside, promising consequences neither of them could yet predict. The snow had stopped by the time Clara left the hospital. The city streets glistened under the glow of streetlights, casting long, golden reflections on the wet pavement. She carried Noah's hand tightly as they navigated the quiet sidewalks. The small warmth of the bus stop encounter still lingering in her chest. Asterisk, Clara had no idea that someone powerful was watching, planning, and remembering. Someone who had the means to change lives not through charity, but through accountability and action. Asterisk, Daniel Whitmore waited just a few blocks away, leaning against the hood of his car in the fading glow of a street lamp. His coat was heavier than the man Clara had met the night before, his demeanor deliberate, calm. When he saw them, he straightened, clutching the scarf she had given him like a compass pointing toward something he had long ignored, human connection. Asterisk, he stepped forward as Clara and Noah approached the bus stop. "Excuse me," he called softly, not wanting to startle them. Asterisk, Clara froze for a moment, studying the man. Something about his presence was familiar, yet distant. He held out his hand not in demand, but in peace. "I need to tell you something," he said. "Something important." Asterisk, Noah tugged at her sleeve. "Mom, who is he?" Asterisk, Clara swallowed, heart hammering, but nodded. "Let's hear him out." Asterisk, Daniel took a deep breath. "My name is Daniel Whitmore." He hesitated, searching for the right words. "I'm the owner of Whitmore Construction, and I need to apologize. For your husband. For what happened 4 years ago. For the ways my company's decisions affected your life." Asterisk, the words hit Clara like a cold gust of wind. The name, the company, the accident. Memories she had tried to tuck away surged forward. The hospital, the legal notices, the hush money that had felt like salt in an open wound. She wanted to turn away, to protect herself, to ignore the man who had everything and yet seemed to carry a hint of guilt in his eyes. Asterisk, you caused it, she whispered, voice tight, almost breaking. "My husband." Asterisk, Daniel nodded, the weight of truth pressing against him. "I didn't know him personally, and I didn't understand the lives affected by the decisions I made. But I do now. And I want to do what's right. Not for publicity, not for recognition, just to take responsibility." Asterisk, Clara looked at him, searching for sincerity, and found it mirrored in the scarf, in the way he held it, in the quiet regret behind his words. "Why now?" she asked. Asterisk, "Because you reminded me," Daniel said. "With that gift, that scarf, you reminded me that life isn't about money or power. It's about what we do for each other. And I can't undo the past, but I can make something better happen now." Asterisk, Clara's chest tightened, a mix of disbelief, anger, and something she couldn't name, hope. She looked down at Noah, who clutched her coat, eyes wide and curious. She had survived for 4 years by keeping her guard up, by believing the world was indifferent. Yet here was proof that one act of kindness could ripple outward in ways she had never imagined. Asterisk, Daniel continued, quietly but firmly. "I've reopened the case surrounding your husband's accident. I've restructured the company's safety protocols and removed those responsible for negligence. I've set up a fund in his name for you, for Noah, for any family affected by my decisions. And, if you'll allow me, I want to help provide stability for you and your son. Not as charity, but as acknowledgement of the life lost and the life still here." Asterisk, Clara's voice caught. "I don't know what to say." Asterisk, "Then don't say anything yet," Daniel replied. Just know that your act of kindness, your gift, made me realize what matters most. I'm here to try to make amends. That's all I can do. Noah stepped forward, small hands reaching toward Daniel. Mom, he's nice, he said simply, the innocence of a child cutting through years of pain and hesitation. Clara smiled, tears pricking her eyes. That night, under the quiet glow of city lights, snow melting into the dark streets, Clara realized something profound. Life was fragile. Yes, but it was also responsive to courage, to generosity, to human connection. One small act, her gift, had sparked change far beyond what she could have imagined. Daniel handed the scarf back to her. I think this belongs to you, he said softly. It's a reminder that even in the smallest things, we can make a difference. Clara took it, feeling the warmth of the wool, and more importantly, the warmth of understanding. Thank you, she whispered. Not for the gift, but for trying to do the right thing. Daniel nodded, a faint, relieved smile crossing his face. Sometimes, it's enough to just start. As they walked away together. Clara and Noah toward home, Daniel toward the life he would rebuild. The snow fell again, soft, persistent, like a promise that life, though unpredictable and often harsh, could still be touched by kindness, responsibility, and courage. And for the first time in years, both of them understood that Christmas, at its heart, was not about wealth or gifts. It was about humanity, and the courage to reach across the gap between strangers, mistakes, and hearts that needed healing.